coming down. You got a lovely face. We're going to your place. And now you got to freak me out. Scream so loud, getting fucking laid. You want me to stay?
Welcome everybody to the Gratitude Era podcast. This is your host Andy Tran, and I'm joined here today by my good friend Sean Ingham. Now Sean and I have been roommates for the better part of the last 4 years, and I could proudly say he's my best friend in Ottawa. We met online actually, like all great couples do, on an internet forum about electronic music, Toronto rave community actually. So shout out to the TRC fam. This show is one that I've wanted to do for a long time since I started thinking about my podcasts. So I decided to ask Sean to come on to the show to discuss her experiences with dating and with women, as I think Sean has a very unique perspective in the dating world. Now Sean is what you would call the modern day Casanova, the man of 1,000 matches, or the Tinder alpha. I believe at one point, verified by me of course, he had over 2,500 matches on Tinder, something a lot of guys can only dream about. Now, we're here to discuss this anomaly of a man and to uncover what this was like and why this may not have been as glamorous as it sounds. So without further ado, Sean, welcome to the podcast. Do you want to tell the people a little bit about yourself? Who is Sean the man?
Now I am a 26-year-old man who lives with his sister. I suppose not much to say about me. I'm now in a committed relationship, and things are going really well with her and I. And I guess everybody will learn about me throughout the show.
And what do you do for work?
For work, I'm a salesman. I've been in sales for over 5 years.
Fantastic. All right, man. I guess we'll just get right into it then. 2,500 matches, man. Where did you find the time and the attention span to deal with all of this?
Honestly, it was pretty difficult at first. It was very trial and error. It wasn't like it was an overnight thing. I'd actually been on Tinder for, I would say, at least 7-8 years, something like that. And I would say it wasn't until probably 3 or 4 years ago that it actually started working in my favor per se, when I started getting at least, 10, 15, 20 matches in a day to maybe 100 matches in a week.
So that's when it kind of blew up then?
Yeah, I would say that's when it blew up, really.
How did it blow up? What happened?
I think what it was is that I started learning how to better position myself online. So being a salesman, essentially, I figured out that if a customer wasn't buying the product that I was selling, maybe it's just that I wasn't pitching it well enough. I think what it is that you have to get their buy-in for lack of a better term. And I figured the same thing I could do with women. I had to get their buy-in. So on Tinder, the biggest way to get somebody's buy-in is having an online status. So Instagram, Facebook, or even pictures is what they swipe on. Mm-hmm. So by choosing the right profile pictures and Tinder bio, I suppose that's when actually I started getting matches in my favor.
So you basically transferred your skills from being a salesman onto your Tinder profile. Of course, you needed to be somewhat of a handsome man to get some matches. But what type of things did you say on your profile, and what type of things did you show on your profile that you think attracted some of these women?
Honestly, I would say my dog. At the time, my sister and I were sharing a dog, and she was a Doberman. It was one of the type of dogs that a lot of people love to have, and she's per se a rare breed, some would say, because they're not very well. You don't see them too often. Mm-hmm. So first thing that I did is I showed like a photo of myself. I would never have selfies because I felt like that was something that was a little too shallow. That's what every other guy did. I never posted photos of me and my body. So the first thing that I had, I believe, I don't really remember because I haven't had Tinder in over a year, maybe a year and a half. I had a photo of myself that someone took of me. I'd say my second photo was me doing some outdoor activities. One of them was with the dog. I had another one which got most of my Tinder matches. I was actually down on one knee, kissing my great-grandmother's hand on her 90th birthday. And another photo was me just showing off, like not really showing off, but I was at a dinner and a friend took a picture of me with a tattoo. And my last one was actually a picture of a duck.
Didn't you have that one where you guys were naked on the beach too?
At one point, I did have a picture of myself and 3 of my other guy friends. We were all butt naked on the beach.
Absolutely mastercrafted. So you hear that, fellas? That's all it takes, right? A little bit of nudity, a little bit of love for the elderly. And what else was in there?
It was dogs.
The
and
dog.
ducks.
Oh, dog. Yeah, definitely. Definitely the must-love dogs demographic.
Yeah, and ducks.
And the duck.
The
Conversation starter, right?
Yeah, the duck was it was funny. So my Tinder bio was a huge one as well. In my Tinder bio, I put I guess this really matters, but I'm 6'6". I know it matters because all women ever say is that if he's under 6 feet, he's just a friend. So I wanted women to know that. Well, I'm 6'6". So
by the way, I'm 5'9", so.
So yeah, it was just essentially that I knew that's one thing that they liked. And then I would just put stuff like a couple things that I enjoy doing. I like going on hikes. I like outdoors, my dog, and see below for more details. And then I remember I put 1, why am I on here? 2, why does my last picture show my abs so well? And lastly, why is my Tinder bio so long? And I think with that, what it kind of transitioned to was when you put something like my abs, see my abs in the last pic, people would be like, oh my God, what a douchebag. Then they go to the last photo and they see that it's a duck.
So humor is extremely important. And of course, being 6'6" doesn't hurt either.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to show them that I was different.
Okay. Now, I would love to go all into, how to mastercraft your Tinder profile to get 2,500 matches, but this is not what this podcast is going to be about. So, describe to me when the times were good, okay? When you're getting all these matches, like you said, 15 matches per day, up to 100 matches per week. How'd you feel? I remember we had a conversation that stands out in my mind to this day, is when you told me, and we really sat down, had an intimate conversation about this, when you told me that you always had to be talking to a girl, okay? So after you tell me how'd you feel during the time when the times were good, can you describe to me what you meant by this, about always having to talk to a girl?
I think it really stems back to my childhood and also just how I grew up. And it just essentially, as a man, everybody, or at least the movies, make it seem like the guy who talks to all the girls is the guy who is the man. He's the alpha. He's the one that everyone looks up to. He's the one that everyone likes. He's the popular one. He's the great one, essentially. And I always felt as though I was never really good at anything in my life, per se. Like I would join football and I played football for a bit and I was pretty decent, but I was never really the greatest. When it came to other sports like hockey, I played a little bit, but I was never the greatest. And I think with women, it was the one thing that I thought that I was really good at, especially like in my day-to-day job. I'm what some would say a really good salesman. And I really wanted the power of that sales to be in my everyday life.
Like the closing, you mean?
Yeah, the closing, essentially that's what it is. So there's the beginning of the sale, there's the middle of the sale, and the end of the sale, which is where you get their buy-in and you close the deal.
Which is the most important part, really.
Yeah, it's what everyone tries to go for. So essentially when it was going really well, just to repeat the question here so I can get back on.
So the first part of the question was, how did you feel, like when times were good? And the second part was, that thing you mentioned to me about always having to talk to a girl.
Yeah, so when things are going really well, you felt on top of the world. And then when things are really low, it was just super shitty.
Well, what's low? Describe a low during this time.
For some time, I actually went and saw a therapist because things were going too well in my personal life, and on top of that, not having the women was really a bad thing. So,
but how can you not have women when you have 2,500 matches, right? At what point would you feel low? Is it just when everyone's asleep or something like that, and you weren't able to talk to anybody?
No, you just feel it's like a low self-esteem because you get 2,500 matches, yes, but if you look at comparison between having a lot of matches versus having no matches, you have the people who have no matches at all. And they're not getting any women, right? And when not getting women, they start to feel to themselves like, oh my God, am I too ugly? Am I not have a good personality? Am I this? Am I that? Well, picture this on the opposite scale. I had 2,500 matches, yes. And I talked to all these women. But most of these women would ghost me. They'd all just stop talking to me out of nowhere.
Okay.
I remember this one girl, I went on a date with her. And she actually came into the store that I was working, and I ended up selling her some products. However, we met prior on Tinder, and the first time we met, quote unquote, was in the store. And then we hung out after work, and we went out for dinner, and we hung out, and we even proceeded to go to her place, but nothing ended up happening sexually. We never really hooked up. We didn't even kiss or anything. And then another time we ended up texting each other, and I went to her house, and that's when the first time we kissed. So it seemed like we just went on a couple of dates and did all that. And then suddenly out of nowhere, she just ghosted me. Just stopped texting me. So I knew within myself that I needed to talk to somebody else instantly.
Like a rebound mechanism, kind of.
Exactly. So I felt as though that I really needed a woman in my life all the time, because if I didn't have one, I would feel inadequate. I just felt like I wasn't good enough.
Why do you feel, was that your first major experience with someone ghosting you?
No, it actually stemmed back from when I was younger. I used to be big on the online dating scene when I was younger, like 15, 16, 17. But I would talk to women that I'd never met and probably will never meet because they're all in the States. They're
So
all
where is
over
this, like
the
on
world.
chat rooms and stuff? Or?
Yeah, essentially chat rooms. I think my first experience with an online girl was when I was 13. I remember I dated this one girl. Her name was Miranda. And my family roasted me so much about her. And I think I really wanted to take it upon myself to prove them wrong, that I could meet a girl online and have a good relationship with one.
Okay. And so I'm guessing she ghosted you at some point?
It was just a weird relationship. Like, again, I was 13 or 14, right? You just, you think you're in love, but really you're not. And yeah, I just went back and forth. And I would say the real point of me getting ghosted was when I was 17 or 18. I met another girl named Gabby. And
Was this also online?
this was also online, yes.
Okay.
I met this girl named Gabby who I met online, and her and I had talked for almost 2 years, and we talked almost every day. And without getting into the full gist of the story, she ghosted me. She just completely out of nowhere gone. And here's the thing. When her and I were talking, it went really well. And everyone had told me, well, what about a catfish? Are you not afraid of somebody catfishing you? I've never Skyped them. I'd never seen pictures of them. But she, I guess, proved to me she was real by writing my name on a piece of paper and showing it to me with the person. But I later found out that the person who wrote that on the paper wasn't actually her.
Interesting.
And the person that I was talking to paid this person to do that. And that's where it's such a
dedication.
It's such a crazy story that somebody would do that to me. Or even not just do that to me, but to do that to anybody. It was just insane.
For sure.
And when I confronted her about it, I said to her, like, hey, I know you're not a real person. She changed her number within a half hour.
Wow. Guess it was easier back then to change your number, huh?
Yeah, I guess it didn't really matter to her. And here's the thing. I understand, when it comes to death and when it comes to other things, sooner or later you accept that the person is gone. With her, it was so heartbreaking, and I remember I was going through so many emotions because I didn't know whether or not she was going to come back.
Interesting.
And yeah.
So let's talk back again about the girl who ghosted you from the Bell store that you worked at. Okay. Did you dwell on the fact that she ghosted? Do you wonder why that she did, like why she left the way she did? Did you speculate?
Yeah, there was some of it from her, but remember, I was talking to 2,500 women.
Yeah.
So when I would ignore it, I would just talk to all these other women. But it would happen with so many different girls. Every single time that I would talk to one, I'd get super close. I remember you and I would complain to you about it, and I would say, no matter how well my life gets, it always stays the same. Every girl always ghosted me. They always left. They always just disappeared. And I think it's really because that's what just Tinder shows you. It shows you that you can go out and get a match as quick as you can leave one.
If you're 6'6".
I guess.
But
yeah.
no. The reason I'm asking about the ghosting in particular is because I want to see how it affected you as a person, right? As a man, right? I mean, it's so easy to ghost people nowadays and just to talk to some for a bit, and you match with someone else and they might be a little bit better looking or whatever, and then you just completely blow off the first guy, first girl, whoever it may be. And people don't realize that it has like a profound effect on some of these people going forward. I mean, it might just be like a never-ending cycle, I guess, right? Of hurt and avoidance, and trying to look for love. It's all very vulnerable emotions at play here. So branching off from this, like I remember we had another deep talk that we had, and it was about insecurity. And you mentioned that you were extremely insecure, that you thought you were like were ugly, and people wouldn't find you attractive. And in my head, I was like, wow, like with 2,500 matches, like I wonder what people think I look like. So can you talk to me a little bit about this? Like, why did you feel like you were ugly?
Yeah, well, I mean, like what you said before, like the whole ghosting, it's like it's become such a trend to ghost somebody. Like it's cool. And the guys who don't get ghosted are the guys who are good looking. So that's how I
Are
felt.
there guys who don't get ghosted though? I mean, I guess at the time you wouldn't really know.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So when you're in your own thoughts, you don't really think about others. You only think about yourself in that situation. So for me, in that situation, I felt like I just wasn't good enough. I always thought to myself, well, I've been told that I have a really good personality, right? But I've also been told that I'm ugly. So if you look at the 2 and 2, I thought.
Oh, I'm sorry about that, by the way.
It's okay, man. It happens, right? But it's like anybody else. Any single time that somebody tells you that you're pretty, or even a female, when they get told that they're pretty, 1,000 times, when one guy calls them ugly, they'll believe the one time.
Yeah.
You know, they'll believe the one time.
For sure, yeah.
It's just us men, we go through the same thing. You know,
Yeah, I suppose.
I would get told that I was ugly, but then indirectly told that I was ugly because all these women that I would talk to would never keep talking to me.
Yeah, if you attribute it to
You know,
what
so
you think it is, I guess.
yeah,
right?
if you think about it like that, when it came to me talking to girls, I would make them laugh. They'd have a good time. They'd say I have a great personality, but they'd ghost me. And you know what? I really felt like they ghosted me simply because I just wasn't good looking enough.
Okay. So did you feel like this? If you can agree with the statement I'm about to make, that there was a void inside of you, right? That you needed to
100%.
get filled by women.
Absolutely.
And you know, these thoughts of insecurity, you know, made this void bigger and bigger, right? To the point where if you were to try to fill it with more and more women, like you would just find that you're just filling this emptiness with more emptiness, therefore creating a bigger void.
Absolutely. I remember 1 week, I hung out with like at least 5 or 6 girls
In a week?
in a week.
That must have been expensive.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, I would sleep with them. You know, I think the most girls I ever slept with in 1 week was like 4 or 5. And to some, that would be like, oh my God, you slept with 4 or 5 women in 1 week.
Epic to some
that's
people.
That's epic. And then you have someone to say, oh my God, that's disgusting. Which to me, it kind of blows my mind because we have the side of the world with women where when women sleep with many men, it's bad for us men to shame them. And I don't believe in slut shaming. I really don't think that it's okay for a man to shame a woman based on her
sexual
or
liberation.
sexual, or whatever she wants to do. And I feel the same thing for men, you know, like at least at the time I felt as though men should be able to sleep with as many women as they want to. You know, we shouldn't be shamed for what we do. And a lot of women would look at that as disgusting. And, you know, I can understand where they're coming from.
It's societal pressure, right?
Exactly. And that's why I also felt like I had insecurities, because I had insecurities on both ends. I wasn't good enough because I slept with too many women, and I also had to sleep with this many women because I felt like I wasn't good enough.
Exactly. So it's a bit of a paradox there.
Exactly. It's just it's like burning the candle at both ends.
Exactly. Yeah.
And for me, I just felt as though that if I did sleep with all these women, I did talk to all these women, and I did continue down this path of filling the void, that maybe one day I would find somebody that I actually wanted to stay with.
Interesting. Well, I've been reading a book lately, and I recommend this book to pretty much all men out there, and it's called The Mask of Masculinity, and it's written by Lewis Howes, and he's actually a podcaster too, and he's interviewed some amazing people, and this book talks about different masks that men wear to justify their masculinity, basically what it means to be a man. And one of these masks is the sexual mask, and I think during our time, you know, when you were going through all this with Tinder, and you know, and I was going on Tinder with you around this time as well, you know, but two completely different stories, right? One where you're being filled completely with women, and one for me not so much, right? So I think we both struggled with this in different ways, and I just wanted to read an excerpt in here, and I think it's, I mean, I hate to get all cliche and all PC with all that, you know, toxic masculinity kind of stuff, but a lot of it really comes down to us too, you know, men having to make better choices. And I think the choices that we make when it comes to women, it's going to create a ripple effect as well, right? So there's a quote in here that says, like, if we're honest, for so many men, life has become a never-ending trophy hunt, but none of them end up actually feeling like a winner. We just think we've won because we've added another woman to our tally. It's not about intimacy anymore. It's about arithmetic. And yet the math always turns out to be disappointing. What do you think about that quote?
It's very true. We go from one woman to the next woman, to the next woman, to the next woman. And it's exactly what he said. It's like the
It's
whole
a conquest.
Yeah, it's like the trophy. You know, we always try to seek number one. That's what us men are told. Like throughout all of our lives, try to be number one. Try to be the best.
Yeah.
Try to be the best you can be. Even at work, you know, when you go to work, always be like persevere or perhaps have perseverance.
Be the top closer, right?
Yeah, be
top
the top
performer.
closer, top performer, top this, top that.
Mm-hmm.
But we have so much societal pressure into being the best version of ourselves that it has an effect with our day-to-day lives.
Well, it fuels you, right? This becomes like your inspiration and your motivation for everything that you do. Right?
Exactly.
And when it gets toxic, that's when we find ourselves doing things that are not natural, right? And end up hurting people and most importantly, hurting ourselves.
Yeah, well, and then you have a lot of women that say, well, when a man sleeps with many women, he's seen as a king.
Shit.
Yeah, he's seen as a king. But when a woman sleeps with a lot of men, well, she's seen as a slut.
Mm-hmm.
And I can agree, but I can also disagree, right? Because not all men are seen as a king when they sleep with a lot of women. Because a lot of women actually look at that and they think that I'm disgusting for it.
Mm-hmm.
And some men even say that I'm disgusting for it as well. And the same thing goes for the other side. When a woman sleeps with a lot of men, they'll say that she's disgusting, but then a lot of men say that she won't care.
I think it's all perspective, right? When it comes to that kind of thing, it's how you look at things, right? And I think people necessarily won't agree on that kind of stuff. And I think, as like if we were going to get into theories and stuff like that, like I think my theory is that, as the world is shifting a little bit into more, power for feminism and like, as women get equal jobs and, women are earning just as much, if not more in the household now, we're getting that societal and that cultural shift where we've gone centuries and centuries and centuries where we've been male dominated, right? To the point where we probably got extremely comfortable with it. And now as the power is shifting to women and stuff like that, we're very much what I'd say in a transition phase where, men and women are not sure how we're going to adjust to these roles yet. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be a lot of people with that old school mindset still, not being able to accept that, my wife might make more money than me, or this girl might make more money than me and stuff like that. Because, there's so much old school mentality that we still want to hang on to, like, such as, a man should always pay on the first date or should always open the door for his woman and stuff like that. But there's other things where, we completely flip it into the new mindset, right? Such as, women deserve equal pay for equal work, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So I really feel like, and this is a bit of a tangent, but I really feel like we're having troubles gripping what society should look like right now, given these changes. So just going back again to our topic about, your experience with Tinder and stuff like that. So my next question for you is, did you or were you able to build connections with girls during this time, given that there were so many options? Did you try to build a connection? What were you looking for at the time? And what did you think overall about online dating? Like, did you think it was a good place to meet people at the time? Do you still think it's a good place to meet people right now? Because I think your perspective is very important here, because it was basically like a candy store for you at the time. Many options. So yeah, once again, let's start with ability to build a connection with girls. Were you looking for that, and were you able to do it?
I would say for some women I did build a connection, and it really felt like I did. Mm-hmm. But it's a lot like, how do you say this, like doing a drug. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. People feel connected with a drug. The
dopamine.
So they just say you snort some coke.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. In that time, it hits you and you love it and it feels super good. And then after a half hour, you crave it and you want more. Right? So I think talking to women, I was an addict. That's really what it was. Mm-hmm. I was addicted to Tinder. I was addicted to social media. I was addicted to the thoughts of what others had on me. Mm-hmm. Right? So we create these things, and because they're such temporary feelings, that we always chase for the next one and the next one and the next one.
Yeah.
So I think like what I did is that me building a connection with someone, I was also addicted to that. I needed to build a connection with someone in order to keep talking to them. And we always put this out there saying, oh, well, somebody's looks attract me, but their personality is what keeps me. Mm-hmm. But really, does their personality actually keep you? Because you'll go and do the same exact thing as somebody else.
For someone who looks better, you mean?
Yeah, for someone who looks better. Even not even someone who looks better, but just because that's just what we're used to. If we have match after match after match after match after match, and we talk to all these people and build all these connections with somebody, you know what we're going to do? We're going to miss the building part. So I'm going to talk to this one person and things are going to go really well, and then I'm going to miss the fact that, or the chase, for example, or the convincing somebody to sleep with me or talk to me or even match with me. Right? So when I would build these connections with these girls, I felt as though it was a great connection. I thought that we had something in common, and boom, they would ghost me. So I go find somebody else.
Were you talking to different girls at the same time while trying to build this connection?
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you feel like that affected your ability to have connections with women? The fact that you were talking to different women at the same time?
Absolutely. It's because I think what it was is that it just wasn't authentic. And some of the women would actually see that. And they would feel like what I'm saying to them was exactly like every other guy. And that's one thing that I hated. I hated when girls brushed me with the same type of, when girls painted me with the same type of brush as every other man. Because I felt within me that I wasn't like everybody else, that I was better than
unique.
them. I was unique, yeah. And we all feel like that because we're told that our whole lives. We're told that our whole lives that, oh, you're unique in what you do. You'll be the best version of yourself. You'll be able to attain this and get that. And I felt as though when I had these connections with the women, that I felt like I was the best guy they were talking to.
Of course. Now, do you feel like their assessment was fair now looking back? Because if you flip it all around, now you're seeing from your side and your account now, you have 2,500 matches. So don't you think all these girls would kind of more or less be the same as well?
Yeah, well...
So how could you not like the way that they treat you like that when you might actually subconsciously be treating them like that too?
You're absolutely right. But I felt at the time that it was fair for me to be like that, because I thought to myself, well, you know what? I got 2,500 matches, but they probably have 5,000 matches. You see, it's so much more difficult, I feel, in my opinion, to have an online status than it is for women. And I wouldn't say all women. I'd say most women, because if you look at the whole thing that's going on right now with Instagram and the Instagram models, you don't see too many men that are Instagram models.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, well, they're not the ones with like the millions of followers and stuff like that. Yeah.
You have a lot of women who are out there that do cam shows. You have a lot of women out there that do, or they just make money off their body, because at least we men, or most men, will go after a woman regardless of what they look like, simply because it makes us feel better.
Exactly. Just back to that point that I just pointed on the book, it's more of like a numbers game for men, right?
Exactly.
Whereas women, because I know the latest versions of Tinder allows you to it gives you a number of like how many matches you have, like especially if you haven't matched it, that little yellow number with like fuzzed out faces.
Yeah.
And it'll tell you like, plus 200 people have liked you and stuff like that.
Wow.
Like I've seen some girls who literally have gone on Tinder for like half an hour. And that number just blows up to like the max of that number can be. I think it's 200 plus, I think.
Yeah, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
You see, well, for some
men... That's half an hour.
Yeah, see, that's crazy. So for me, like, I'd have to wait at least 2 weeks to get 200 matches. So when I was talking to all these women, I had it in my head, you know what? I might have 100 matches a week, but you probably have 500 matches today.
Yeah, shit, that's a lifetime for me.
So yeah, even for yourself, I know you went through some struggle with Tinder and having an online presence, and it really affected you. And I remember you and I talking about it, and then you compared it a lot to me. I feel as though we were both pretty much the same, but on extreme sides of the hemisphere.
Yeah, I was like a little friggin' bunny hill while you were like, Mount Himalaya, you know what I mean? But I guess if you want to compare mountains to mountains.
Well, so think about it, right? So you're on the bunny hill, and for you it might feel like it's not that good, but for me, that Himalayan mountain, I was falling down almost half the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it was hard to climb for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And it's super difficult. So just back to what we were saying before, you're saying to build a connection, and with having so many options at the time, yeah, I felt as though the connections that I was having with them was great, and it really sucked when those connections meant nothing simply because they found somebody better.
Well, simply because they're doing the same thing you're doing, basically. You're just talking to different people, and there's that joke that people are like Wi-Fi, and like especially on Tinder, where you're just gonna connect to the strongest connection. Yeah,
you just go to the strongest. You're absolutely right. And the thing is too, in a world like today, there's 1,000 connections and so many different spots and so many different places.
Exactly. Everywhere you go. Even if I was to turn my Wi-Fi on here, I would probably see, just in my residential neighborhood, probably like 30 different Wi-Fis.
Yeah, you see your neighbors and everything. And that's what we grow up to. We grow up being told, well, don't look at your neighbor's grass to see if it's greener. Try to
water your own grass.
Water your own grass. Right? So another question that you had said is like, what do I think about online dating?
Yeah. As a whole. And do you think it's changed since before then and how it is now, or do you think it's more or less the same?
I think online dating began for the people who couldn't really find somebody, and now again it's just like a trend. Having 2,500 matches was something to be cool about.
Yeah.
Just like 30 years ago, sleeping with or going on many dates with a lot of girls was really cool. And it's kind of the same thing now. So my thoughts on dating now, or even online dating, is that it's the same thing really. You have people that go on there to try to fill voids. Just like some of the women that would go out there and sleep with a lot of guys, they say that they have daddy issues. Right? So I understand some women have daddy issues, but not all of them do. And what's difficult about nowadays is a lot of people mask their trauma with humor.
Yeah, that's actually another one of those masks in the Mask of Masculinity too, the Joker mask, actually.
Yeah, you know, it's just crazy. We mask our true self, and nobody self-reflects enough to realize that what they're doing is wrong. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like me. What I was doing, I knew it was wrong at the time, but the thing is that I felt better knowing that I was doing it than I felt bad knowing I was doing it. You get what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's like, what did I prefer? Feeling good about it or feeling bad about it? Obviously, I preferred feeling good about it, so I just ignored it when I felt bad.
Yeah, I mean, like, of course, cocaine is fun for the first half an hour as well, right? So
exactly, back to that. Yeah, you snort cocaine, you like it for a half hour, then once it dies down, you do another line, and then you feel like that line wasn't good enough, so you do a bigger line.
Yeah,
and then you do the bigger line, and then guess what? Cocaine isn't cutting out for you, so you want to do some MDMA. And MDMA isn't cutting it out for you, so you want to go to the next thing.
For
and
sure.
It's just an ongoing cycle until you fill a void. But here's the thing.
Well, you die probably.
Yeah, you keep going and
void.
Yeah, and it kills who you are. And I felt like it was killing my authenticity.
For sure. Well, it's interesting, man, and thanks for sharing. So, do you still think it's a good place for people to meet people?
I think it'd be a good place, but just like anything else, a glass of wine a day is good for you. A bottle of wine a day, not good for you.
Yeah.
So I think if it's done within moderation, and if you actually pay attention to what you're consuming, it can be good for you. But we're humans, man. Mm-hmm. We humans, we latch on to what makes us feel great, regardless if it's good for us or bad for us.
Yeah.
Because we don't often think about the consequence. We only think about how good it feels at the beginning. Mm-hmm. I feel like us humans, or a lot of humans, are very reactive than proactive.
100%. That's just the way that we're programmed nowadays, right? With all the social media and everything coming at us so fast, like we don't even have time to really think and process things to be proactive. We're just in a constant state of reactivity.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is too is that when we go on, let's say you go on Instagram, right? You want to have humor, just go on Instagram and find a meme.
Uh-huh.
You want to have a girl, just go online and swipe right.
Yeah, you want some Chinese food, just go on Uber Eats.
Just go on Uber Eats. Mm-hmm. You want Amazon, shipped to you in a day. Mm-hmm. We have this perspective on things where as we want it, we'll get it right away.
Yeah, patience is like no longer a thing anymore.
Yeah, and then we lose our communication, because when I would talk to all these women, my communication skills were probably very poor, simply because I was able to think about what I wanted to say before I even said it.
Exactly. Took your time.
Yeah, I took my time.
And nowadays it's like the more time you take, actually, even the better, right? Because I feel like if you text back too quick sometimes.
Oh man, yeah. And I remember talking to you about that. I remember trying to like coach you on and say, hey man,
tell me not to do that. Yeah.
Don't text right away. Play the game.
I just forget, right? So I mean, like what I've really gone in my journey in the last couple of years is really learn how to be more myself and just accept myself and literally just. And I don't know, we've had this conversation, we've argued about it a few times, but really just do what I want to do and be who I want to be, and just really
and I can actually thank you for that, because you've always stuck to your gloves, and you said like, no man, I want to be myself. I don't want to have to pretend to be somebody else in order to make someone like me.
Exactly.
And I felt that in the time of me being on Tinder, me building the connection, I was being myself. But I also realized that my self-reflection, once it all started dying down, that I was simply just being a salesman.
You had your formula that worked.
Exactly. I had a formula that worked. Just like 2 plus 2 is 4, 3 plus 1 is also 4. And guess what? If 2 plus 2 didn't work, I did 3 plus 1.
Interesting.
Or I do 5 minus 1.
That's right.
I try to find all these different methods to get the same answer.
Yeah. Well, I'm really happy to see, your progress from then till now. Like, I'm actually very proud of you.
Thank you.
But like, so let's talk about your relationship now. Okay. So now you're in a committed long-term relationship today for about a year now. What was the transition like, going from, boatloads of women, unlimited women, to focusing on just one? Was it hard to get off of Tinder?
It was difficult, yeah. I think what I had to do was a lot of self-reflection. Just going on. It came to a time where when I'd go on Tinder, I was just getting so sick of always seeing the same thing. It's a lot like when I moved away from my hometown, Sudbury. Mm-hmm. I remember one night I was just partying with some friends, and I found out that a friend of mine was actually living in Ottawa. And I just called him that night and I said, hey man, I'm moving in with you. And I just got out. It was because I felt like what I was doing was just the same thing over and over and over again. And I thought to myself, when I would do my self-reflection, if you continue down the same path, taking the same steps and expecting a different result, you're crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what Einstein says.
Exactly. You can't do that. And that's what I was doing. I was on Tinder trying to fulfill a void within myself. But I was always telling myself that I wanted a relationship. And yet, every single time I'd meet somebody, I would just get with them and then I'd leave. I'd get what I wanted, I'd leave. Get what I wanted and leave. But every single time that I talked to somebody and I actually wanted a relationship, they would leave. And I would feel like I'm not good enough for it. So the transition from going online to always having matches, I actually had to kind of separate myself from the online. What I guess I started doing was I turned off all my notifications from Tinder.
Okay.
So now when I'd go on Tinder, I'd see them, but I wouldn't be constantly reminded that I had a match. And I had to kind of I had to like push myself away from it and find different ways because I couldn't entirely get off of it. And I recall back in January, last year in January, my friend and I, one of my best friends now, Edgar, he started saying to me, man, you don't have to talk to all these women on Tinder. You can go out and meet them in person. And I was so shy. Think about it. A guy with 2,500 matches. A guy who a lot of people would say is, oh my God, that's amazing that you have all these matches, that you go on all these dates with women, and you have all these women who say that you're a really good looking guy. I was super shy because I was afraid of the rejection. Yeah. But it was the same thing online. The only difference was that when they
wouldn't know if you were getting rejected.
I wouldn't know it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know if I was getting rejected. In person, you would know.
Yeah.
And as a salesman, when I sell on my day-to-day job, you're right. I didn't like getting rejected. But here's the thing: I didn't take it personal because it was a product.
Yeah.
I wasn't selling myself. I was selling a product. So when I was in person and I would try to sell myself and I try to talk to them and convince them to buy my idea for like in relation to sales, and the idea was talking to me or dating me. Yeah. I was afraid of them rejecting me.
You were the product for sure.
I am the product.
And you were emotionally attached to that product.
And now, and with Tinder, I was just a product of society. I was a product of all these different things coming at you that just make you feel like less of a human because essentially you're not good enough. Yeah. So now with my long-term relationship and the transition between going from there to now, it was a pretty difficult task, I would say.
For sure. Talk to me about temptation, okay? About going back to that life and, talking, being tempted by that, all those women when you're just focusing on one, especially when things are kind of going rough with your girlfriend. Did you overcome this? How did you feel like you overcame this? Like, when did you overcome this? Like, how long did it take? Let's go into that a little bit.
Well, to be fair, in between the time of me kind of having my whole hype on Tinder versus meeting my girlfriend, there was I guess a bit of a time where I was leaving the Tinder life, I suppose, and I wanted to meet more women in person because I felt it was more raw, right? Yeah. You can have better conversations. For sure. And I stopped going out to try to find a girlfriend, or stopped trying to find a woman to fill the void, and I started just thinking to myself, you know what? I just got to go out and have fun. That's it. I just got to go out, do what I have to do, have fun with my friends. And that's exactly what you and I did. The night that you and I, we just went out to have some fun. We didn't really go out to pick up women or anything like that. And we never really did, you and I. When you and I would go out, we'd go out to have some fun. And then if we picked up a woman, yeah, we did. It was awesome. But it wasn't like our main goal to pick up a woman. Right? If we did talk to some, then yeah, it was great. But if we didn't, then it was whatever.
I felt like I just didn't want to set myself up for disappointment. Like, if I was to go out and not pick up any women, I still wanted to have a good time when I was out, right? So
yeah, actually, you know what? And I think maybe that's what I was doing. I was just masking it. Maybe I did actually want to go out and pick up women, but I masked it with, I'm just here to have a good time. And I think I had to learn what that was at its face value, and I had to do some self-reflection and take a step back and look at what I was doing from a real third-person perspective. And the whole temptation, getting into a relationship and seeing these women and knowing that who I was and what I was doing, it was very difficult. It was very difficult because at the beginning of the relationship, I was thinking to myself, well, could I find somebody better? Because it's the same exact thing when you're talking.
It's your habit, right?
Yeah, it's my habit. I'm used to it. Can I find somebody better? Is there somebody out there that's better? Right? And I think while I was dating her, as time progressed, I looked back at the times when I was super lonely, super insecure, and I just hated myself for it. And even while I was talking to my therapist, him and I talked about me getting into a relationship, and I told him what I wanted, and I created some sort of a checklist. Okay. And I think what really got me to falling more in love with my girlfriend was that she was checking all the things off the box. Okay. She was checking all the boxes on my list.
Do you agree that not everyone's going to check every box on your list though?
Oh, absolutely. There's no way of finding the perfect woman. If you really feel like you're going to find somebody who is absolutely 100% perfect, it's very rare.
For
I'm
sure.
not saying it doesn't happen. I'm sure some people out there where they find somebody who's completely and utterly perfect and there's nothing about them that's wrong. I thought like that for the first 8 months of my girlfriend, but then we started getting into like little arguments. But that's what every relationship is. And it's not just like stop it, just get over it and move on. You know, sorry, not stop and move on, get on. That's what you have to do in a relationship. You have to stop, have a conversation, you talk about it, you communicate it. And then with my girlfriend from the beginning, what we started doing with each other is we started saying, no big deal is a huge deal, and no small deal is a small deal. Every deal is the same size. And that's something that we did in order to make our relationship better. So every single time we get into an argument, something we just talk about it. But I'm going off topic.
That's
now.
awesome. One of the last couple things I want to talk to you about is self-love, okay? Because we were talking about voids before, okay? Talk to me about your journey of self-love from, you know, these dark times of your past where you needed to fill your void with all these women to self-love right now. And is this something that you still might struggle with?
At the time, my self-love was the only way that I can love myself is if I talk to a lot of girls. The only way that I can love myself is by sleeping with all these types of women.
Or that's what you thought, at least.
At least that's what I thought, yeah. So I was trying to mask self-loving myself by having all these girls. And the thing is that when I proceeded to talk to them and continue to get to know them, I thought that I was getting to know myself better because I was talking to them.
Okay.
But I was just doing the same thing.
Yeah, I think what you were doing at the time is you were trying to get your value from other people and from these women. So, like, you know, when you were getting all these women talking to you and being into you, how funny you are, you know, how handsome you are and stuff like that. Like, I think the more that happened, you got your worth from them. Yeah. Right? Instead of, you know, what we're supposed to be doing, which is like getting the worth from within ourselves, right? No matter what anybody thinks or says about us, like our worth is untouchable, right? Like no one can set that price except ourselves. So I think that might have been an issue then. Realizing that now, if you do feel that way now, describe the two feelings between then and now.
Yeah, well, I needed the opinions of others. I needed a positive opinion from others on myself in order for me to think a positive opinion on myself.
Of course.
And I think now what I really needed, or I think it's what anybody else needs, is that you need to really look in the mirror and just know that you are good enough. Yeah. And not just good enough for others, but good enough for yourself. Knowing that you can walk into a room and it's not they will like me, it won't bother me if they don't. Exactly. And I think that's what I had to really realize. I had to think that upon myself and really self-reflect that I shouldn't be bothered because they don't like me. Because I already went through all high school, my childhood with a lot of people not liking me. And there's no way that I'll be able to make everyone like me. Of course. So I'm kind of losing my words here.
It's an ongoing fight, right? I mean, it's an ongoing journey of self-love for sure.
It is, and it's kind of like building a house per se. You start by digging the hole, or actually, you know what? You don't even start by digging the hole. You start by finding the right property. And I think what it is that a lot of us do is that we are so uncomfortable with ourselves that we see ourselves like property, right? So we see ourselves and we're like, well, why would I want to build a house within this mind, within this heart, when I don't even like the property itself?
Yeah, you don't like the land.
I don't like the land. I don't like the grass, and I find so
many.
Well,
the land can't be moved, right? So
exactly,
I guess it would be the land.
Yeah, you know what I mean. The land can't be moved, and guess what? I can't turn myself into somebody else. So you know what I should do? I should take this land, take this person, and try to become something that's better. Yeah. And I thought that talking to many women was what made me better. Of course. But I realized that reading books, trying to find better friends,
doing things you love, right?
Doing things that I love. Yeah, surrounding myself by people. And I think what it is too is it plays a huge part with the kind of people that surround yourself, right? Yeah. So a lot of people that surrounded me, like for example, growing up, my brother picked up a lot of women. And my brother and I really struggled with our relationship. Him and I went back and forth all the time with who was better than the other, which son was the favorite son with my parents. We always struggled with each other. We were always at each other's necks trying to see who is the better one.
Very competitive.
Exactly, very competitive.
With a lot of brothers for sure.
And my brother would get so much attention from women that I thought, you know what, maybe my brother and I would get along more if I got a lot of women too. And the more that I got women, him and I, our relationship never got better.
I see.
So,
And I think you, at the time, you got a lot of your self-worth from your brother as well. So it's not just from women sometimes, but sometimes it's validation from our family members.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Like
your older brother.
I needed validation from my parents.
Yeah.
I wanted my parents to love me more than they showed
Mm-hmm.
because I felt like it just wasn't good enough.
So I think maybe what happened was like this void that you had in your childhood, it grew up with you, right? And then it just kind of like, it needed filling.
Yeah.
And then you tried to fill it with like all these girls on Tinder and all that kind of stuff. And it's an ongoing battle, right? No one's ever going to reach that point where like you fully love yourself, right? Everyone has insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
And like once you do learn to love yourself to the point where, you know, your life is starting to get better, I feel like, you know, as humans, we deal better with like criticism. You know what I mean? We don't take things too personal because like our self-worth kind of becomes bulletproof a little bit. Right? So I feel like going forward, there's going to be many podcasts where I will be talking about self-love and, you know, self-compassion and things like that. And I think that's something that humans in general should have more of for themselves. And I think that would make our world a lot better. But we're running out of time a little bit. So the last thing I wanted to ask you actually was, I always try to end up my podcast with advice, right? So how can you help the listeners? So I have a couple of questions here. So what would you have to say to guys who may not get many matches or any matches at all on Tinder, right? And what would you have to say to guys right now who get a ton of matches on Tinder?
Honestly, I would say try to find the real void within you.
Mm-hmm.
And not just the void of not getting women. For me, the void that I was trying to fill was having a good relationship with somebody. And not just a good relationship with somebody, but a good relationship with myself. Because with myself, I needed to make sure that my grass was green, and the only way I could do that was getting women to I guess
watering it with them.
Watering it with, like, for me even.
Yeah.
I wanted them to water it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And only because I didn't want to see the real void. I didn't want to know what it really was.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to hide it. So if I can just say one piece of advice for the people that are out there, the people that are listening to this, stop trying to find all these women online. They're not what you want.
Mm-hmm.
They're not what you need, actually.
Mm-hmm.
They might be what you want, but they're not what you need. You have to really find within yourself what really satisfies you and what is going to fill the void. Whether it's reconnecting with an old relationship that you had with an ex-girlfriend, or if it was reconnecting with a family member,
Mm-hmm.
Or even family members. And try to surround yourself with people that are like-minded and have a better perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So with you, for example, I know like you have a really good perspective on a lot of different things, and you are very successful in a lot of things that you do, and that I looked up to, and I wanted to be equal to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me, you wanted to be equal to me with picking up women.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I could say to the people out there is that if there's one thing that you can do, it's better yourself in a sense of make yourself a better person, treat people better, read books, see how you can change your frame of mind, how you can change your perspective, and even your approach on things.
Yeah.
That's one of the big things is changing your approach.
For
and
sure.
I think with you, I'm going to be joined in on a lot of different podcasts, and I can give so much more advice for all these different things, but try to find the void.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to like knowing yourself. I think knowing yourself is extremely important because I really believe that you can't love yourself until you actually know yourself. Mm-hmm. So you need to take that time with yourself to be okay with yourself, to be okay with being alone, not needing those women for validation or not needing anybody else to give you your worth for that validation. If Tinder is hurting you, and I know because I've gone through this myself, if you go a couple of days with no matches and nobody's talking to you and stuff like that, like if Tinder's doing more bad to you than it's doing good for you, I think it's time for you to get rid of it because it's just not working, right? And once you get past this negative thought pattern of yourself and needing this validation and just filling this empty void with more emptiness, then I think you can really start progressing in your life. And the power of positivity is extremely important too. That's what I believe in. Like if you really believe positively about things in your life and things that are going to come to you and stuff like that, I believe that they will come to you. Just continue to work on yourself. If the gym is your thing, do the gym, work out, get out, get social. And I think, the building blocks will just build themselves after a while, right? So, I mean, that's my advice too. We're both pretty open. So I guess if anyone ever wants to look for us, you want to plug your Instagram or your Facebook or whatever, where people can find you, email address.
Sure. Yeah. If anybody wants advice or anything like that, I'm very open to it. And that's the one thing that I thought, I wish at the time that I wish I could just have a personal conversation with somebody who is like-minded in the same situation I was. So if you guys want to reach out to me, it's Sean I, sean.92, and it's Sean SEANI.92.
That's on Instagram?
And that's on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, you can reach out to me there. You can also find me, Sean Andrew, on Facebook as well. And feel free to reach out. And if there's one thing that I can say that really changed my perspective on the whole thing, is actually just even getting a girlfriend. And having a loving girlfriend who is great and is able to do all these things with me. Even have this type of conversation with me that you and I are having right now. I talked to her about all the dark times that I had, and it really improved me as a person. And you said to me at the beginning of this whole talk that you're proud of who I've become. And it's really because I was so open-minded, and I tried to really self-reflect on the things that made me feel the worst and improve from there.
For sure. Well, let me attest, and let me just kind of butt in the middle of your statement there when you said, finding a girlfriend helped you and stuff like that. Personally, when it comes to relationships, I think you should only get to a relationship when you are ready and when your partner is ready to get in a relationship. Because when you often rush into one, when you think you know what you want, or again, when you're trying to fill a void, things can often very, very easily get toxic. And I see so many people in so many unhappy, toxic relationships right now that it's just, it's really kind of depressing a little bit, right? Just to see everyone kind of going through pain and suffering and stuff like that. And I'm not saying, just be single and sleep around and stuff like that, because there's another alternative, right? You could just be single, you can love yourself, you can do all these things for yourself, like yoga, meditation. Get right with yourself. Because when you get right with yourself, that's when when you're actually able to meet someone and give someone your full potential, right? And also receive your full potential as well, without that validation. So anything else you'd like to add before we close up?
I just think there's no real right way of doing anything. There's no book to life.
For sure.
And we got to go through things day by day and take things as they are.
Yeah.
And not overthink it. And when you do some self-reflection, it's important not to overthink on the self-reflection or to overreact after the self-reflection. So yeah, that's basically all I want to add.
For sure. I mean, yeah, and I definitely agree, man. There's definitely no right answers. But I just want to thank you for the time, for coming here. And again, this is one that I've been wanting to do for a really long time. I think it went fantastic. We had a great conversation. I think this helps our friendship as well. And hopefully have you again on later on in the future.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
No problem, man.